or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
Happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is
President Trump's auto tariffs officially took effect at midnight after that major announcement yesterday afternoon with at least 10% tariffs on dozens of foreign countries.
That's what's coming to America. The coolest factories, the highest tech factories, they're all coming home, and Donald Trump's bringing them home, and he's going to create a renaissance of high-tech manufacturing in America. That's why America's going to win.
Do we want our critical supplies like life-saving medical medicines and chips being made in China, or do we want them being made right here in the United States of America? Every American knows the answer to that question.
China today announced that it is going to take resolute countermeasures. The expectation is that not only are they going to hit back with counter tariffs, but also with an expanded retaliation toolbox. So this includes potential export controls for more critical minerals, as well as punishing individual American companies.
The European Union has said it is prepared to retaliate against President Trump's reciprocal tariffs.
We're now preparing for further countermeasures.
My advice to every country right now is do not retaliate. Sit back, take it in. Let's see how it goes, because if you retaliate, there will be escalation.
The Frisco Memorial High School community gathered tonight in grief after the stabbing death of a teenager at a track meet.
Another teenager, a student at Frisco Centennial, is now charged with the murder. 17-year-old Austin Metcalf's twin brother was at the track with him.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily here live, Washington, D.C. Today is April 3rd, 2025, Anno Domini. President Trump is now upending global economics and waging war on the globalists on behalf of the American worker. This is the path that leads to the return of the American dream. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Deal. You see, today is day one of President Trump's Great Deal, and I get it. There's panic on the street. No, not all the streets, not on Main Street, but on Wall Street. And to tell you something, this is the first time that Wall Street has been taxed in our lifetime. And look, I have a retirement plan too. I get it. But you know what? It's going to bounce back. Maybe you go and buy the dip. That's not the point of the Great Deal. When President Trump held up that big, beautiful chart yesterday in the Rose Garden, he was doing something very special. He was putting Americans first. You're going to see every leftist pundit, probably some conservative commentators, the globalists, question, attack, and smear President Trump's policy. We are in uncharted waters, but President Trump is pioneering a new future, a new American public, where America and Americans lead the way. You have to trust the process. Look, how many times was Wall Street bailed out? Whether it was the 2008 financial crisis or the 2020 pandemic, the question MAGA always had was, where's our bailout? Where's the bailout for the little guy? Where's our deal? We've had a bad deal. We want a great deal. And here it is. It's not just a stimulus check. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a path to prosperity and greatness. Look, remember this. Biden was propping up his buddies in Wall Street and Silicon Valley, whether they were corporate oligarchs or foreign leaders, with his son on the board of their companies. But guess what? America is not picking up the tab anymore. Whether it's NATO or whether it's these Europors over there, you can pay for your own defense. You can take care of your own burden. Why should we and the American people have to pay the bill for your mistakes? Why should we have to do that? We're not going to do it anymore. It is not going to be on the backs of the American people. It's time for the American people to get a deal of their own. And I think it's time for a great one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great New Deal.
America First truly means.
Welcome to the second American Revolution.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here. Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C. Folks, Trump is fully in the process of draining the swamp, and the great deal is in effect. But the uncertainty for many is, will he expose the entire pandemic? And believe it or not, there's enough public evidence for folks to be concerned with who injected themselves with this experiment. If you were forced to get the shot to work, travel, or maybe just trusted the system back then, check out this natural solution formulated by Peter McCullough, Dr. McCullough, in collaboration with the wellness company. Now, they just leveled up their original detox formula for $30 less. Introducing the 3-in-1 Ultimate Spike Detox, conveniently consolidated into one capsule with 4 times more naticanase, 500 milligrams of bromelain, and 500 milligrams of turmeric root extract. Naticanase is an enzyme researched for its anti-clotting effects, and it may work to break down spike proteins. Now, you combine that with the bromelain and the curcumin, it provides a potent blend for detoxification and cellular support. Crafted with 100% natural ingredients, Ultimate Spike Detox is backed by research. It offers effective support for your cells' repair, natural repair and recovery. Experience the only formula approved and used by Dr. Peter McCullough, a top freedom-fighting doctor who risked it all. How do you get access? Go ahead to twc.health/POSO and use promo code POSO to get 10% off plus free shipping. Again, that's twc.health/POSO and use promo code POSO to get 10% off. Get back to that pre-COVID feeling. Now, folks, I get it. You know, it's. By the way, here's the white pill, right? You remember the white pill? That's the hope. So what's the white pill in all of this? The white pill is that all the stock bros, those are the guys who are actually losing it. Those are the guys who are actually freaking out. They're saying, no, tariffs. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Oh no. Oh darn. Look what you're doing. Won't someone think of the Vietnamese? Won't someone think of the drop shippers? Won't someone think of the multinational corporations? Won't somebody think of the globalists? And here's the thing. We've been saying it for so long here on the program. We Americans have been addicted. We have been addicted, particularly through Wall Street, to this free flow of cheap products from East Asia, from Southeast Asia. We outsourced all of our manufacturing over there, which includes, by the way, national security interests, when you consider the fact that, we were just talking about the wellness company, when you consider the fact that the precursors to all of our antibiotics are made in China. Why would you do that? Why would you want to do that as a country if you're in another situation like that, or, God forbid, an actual war, right? Think about it. Horrific. Absolutely horrific. Then you think about the steel, the entire steel industry. You think about all the issues that go on. Of course, this is national security. Okay, it's very simple. But on the flip side, what happens when China owns your country? What's it like? Well, go take a look at the country right now, because it's pretty close. The devastated areas of Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, they look like they're blown out. They look like they have lost a war. Appalachia. And in many ways they did. They lost a trade war with their own elites, with their own governing class in this country, because they sold them out. And so when you sit there and you say, you know something, I want to pay $1 more. Personally, I'll pay $1 more at the store for a Made in America sticker. That's what you're getting. Because what does it mean? What is the cure for this addiction? Well, you got to go through withdrawal. You have to go through withdrawal as President Trump is waging this war on the globalists. And going through withdrawal is not easy. And going through withdrawal is not fun. But I promise you, it will cure the cancer. And when you become cancer-free, when America becomes cancer-free, then we will be free, right, of this crippling chronic disease that our addiction to Chinese goods and our addiction to these cheap foreign goods is. We're sending trillions of dollars overseas. We talked to Reshore yesterday about this. This has been the issue, and there are, by the way, economists who point this out. They pointed out left and right that this is something that the American worker needs. And the American worker has been completely forgotten. And you want to tell me something? There's one man who's actually been talking about this from day one, and that's President Trump, all the way back when he was operating in a private capacity, in a personal capacity for 40 years. He's been talking about trade issues and talking about the need to restructure this for the American people. And I like to call his deal the Great Deal. Someone that I wanted to get on to talk about this, we're very honored to have on the program yet again, Harrison Fields, the special assistant to President Trump and the principal deputy press secretary. Harrison, how are you? So there's a lot of, there's a lot of talk right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. People are asking what's going on. People are looking at Wall Street. People are looking at the situation. President Trump, of course, has this major announcement yesterday. We're kind of referring to this thing as the Great Deal, which has come out from the administration. Let me ask you, where do you see the White House on this? Is this the expected response, and what can we expect going forward? All right, so apparently there's some issue with the connection. We're going to work on that. I see I'm getting a message. That was interesting. So I could hear him, but you guys couldn't hear him. I don't know what the issue with that was, but we're going to get that fixed in just 1 second. So look. Yeah, he was mentioning something about how President Trump says himself all the time that he can cure cancer, and that CNN would come out and say that he's putting doctors out of business, and that's exactly what's going on here. So he's helping the American people, but of course they're looking at the other perspective, and you're going to hear these. By the way, they did the exact same thing with the deportations, and they're currently doing the exact same thing with the deportations. And you hear all these lies. Oh, the guy's a Maryland father. No, he's actually an MS-13 member. Or there was other hoax story this week about they said, oh, this guy got arrested. He was just going for an interview at McDonald's and he got arrested. No, he wasn't going for an interview. That was a lie. It was just a straight up media hoax. And you hear this again and go, oh, the Venezuelan hairdresser, this and that. Guys, why do we keep falling for these hoaxes? Why do we keep allowing the media to spin the narrative? Here's the narrative that I want to set. This is the great that we are going to put forward, because this is what's happening. This is the Great Deal. You're entered into day one. You are part of the Great Deal. Your children will get the Great Deal. They will have the ability to have access to wealth beyond their imagination through the restructuring of global trade. All right, guys, are we going to try this again? Harrison, do we have you? All right, guys, and guys, can the audience hear Harrison? Oh, okay. So yeah, we're still working on it, guys. We're getting it figured out. Working on those routing issues that we know are always fun when we bring guests in for phoners from the White House. But look, folks, here's what goes on. What's going on here is the ability for your kids and your children's children to actually have a piece of the pie for themselves. That's what the American dream is. You keep sending money overseas and taking on debt to buy more foreign products. Well, guess what? That means the money doesn't go into your community. That's why all of these communities have been hollowed out. Go read Bowling Alone. Go read any of these things. And that's why you see the deaths of despair that have ratcheted up again and again. And you've seen so many of these corporate raiders, the Frank Luntzes of the world, pushing oxycodone and pushing all of this absolute abject nonsense and horrible deaths of opioids and opioid addictions. Why? Because people aren't feeling the wealth, because the economics are totally rotten, and this Great Deal is going to fix it. We'll be right back here, Human Events Daily.
Bates here with your Real America's Voice news break. Thanks so much for being here with us. President Trump says the U.S. is in an economic emergency and a base 10% tariff on imports from all countries is a first step in getting out of it. During his much anticipated reciprocal tariff announcement in the Rose Garden of the White House Wednesday, the president also rolled out a 34% tax on imports from China and 20% on European Union imports, among others. Plus, he described the tariffs as, quote, kind tariffs, implying that the plan could have been more aggressive.
If you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America. And we've seen companies coming in like we've never seen before. Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs. I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers, don't manipulate your currencies. They manipulate their currencies like nobody can even believe.
Meantime, markets around the world are reacting to President Trump's tariffs. So far, U.S. stock markets are tanking, with NASDAQ seeing losses of more than 5% in early trading. Norway's foreign minister is pushing back against the Trump tariffs, saying that he believes the new taxes will hurt NATO allies and may violate Article 2 of the alliance, which stresses economic cooperation among allies in order to avoid conflict. The foreign minister plans to raise the issue with Secretary of State Marco Rubio during a NATO meeting in Brussels today. Poland's prime minister is predicting the tariffs will cut part of his country's gross domestic product, saying it was a, quote, severe and unpleasant blow because it comes from our closest ally, but we'll survive it, he says. Meantime, Spain's prime minister says, and this is a quote, we are once again asking President Trump to reconsider to sit down at the negotiating table with the European Union and also with the rest of the world. That's a quick check of your headlines.
Today, they talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, he's done a great job.
All right, Jack Posobiec returning here, Human Events Daily. Going to try this one more time, folks. Do we have Harrison Fields here from the White House?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you great, Harrison. Just checking with the folks. Tell us a little bit about the rollout here. How does the White House see things, and what do you want the American people to know?
Yeah, so this should come to a surprise to no one. If you've been paying attention to Donald Trump's, really his life, as you touched on earlier before, his professional and private life, he's always been talking about America's disadvantage when it comes to trade and when it comes to what bad deals in Washington have done to the American workforce and to great American cities like Detroit, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, the list goes on. So he's been calling it Liberation Day. Yesterday was Liberation Day. And here we have people who seem to be more concerned about what this will do to Cambodia than what this will end up doing to the American people and to the American worker. Listen, President Trump had a choice. He made a choice to stand with the USA, our citizens, our manufacturing, our businesses, our investment, and not that of the world, not that of the EU, Southeast Asia, the list goes on. So it's not an easy decision for many presidents, but for Donald Trump, for President Trump, he knew exactly what he wanted to do, what America needed to have done, and that's exactly what he's doing. And it's going to pay off in dividends. You're already seeing people cave and realize, wow, President Trump wasn't playing around when he said he was going to do this, and now everyone wants to run to the negotiating table. This should have been done years ago, decades ago. Now President Trump is in office, and now the world is realizing they can no longer steal from the United States and steal from our workers, and there's going to be monumental change as a result.
Well, I think that's exactly right. We're already hearing signs from various countries around. I know Israel came out yesterday, some signs out of Canada saying, whoa, prior than being recalcitrant, Mark Carney seems like he's actually interested in negotiating now. And I think that's really what Secretary Bessent was saying yesterday, that if countries come to this really is a designed to get countries to come to the table. Would that be an accurate way of putting it?
Well, that's one of the things. I mean, the reality is President Trump was going to do this, and like he said already, this is not necessarily a negotiation. This is the policy of the United States. We're implementing these tariffs. This is not changing. But if this is now going to have countries turn to themselves and say, wow, we have been taking advantage of the American economy through our trade barriers, through our trade deficits, through currency manipulation. And the United States, under President Trump's leadership, is not going to allow this to happen anymore. Then if they reevaluate what they've been doing to us and seriously reconsider decades worth of negative policies towards our American workers, then conversations will always be had. But the reality is tariffs are going in effect. It doesn't matter what anyone has to say about it. We have a massive problem on our hands, and it's one that touches on our national security. COVID was a beautiful example of why we need American dominance when it comes to manufacturing again. Why are we relying on China for our pharmaceuticals? Why are we relying on Taiwan for our semiconductors and for our batteries? Our country would come to a crippling halt if the world decided to turn away from us and say, we are stopping trade. We need to make sure that we have dominance back home. This is going to mean jobs. This is going to mean trillions of dollars. You're already seeing the investments pouring in as a result of these tariffs. The countries and companies understand that President Trump means business, and it's going to work out for our country like it did the first time he was president.
And I think that people need to understand that, and I do. What is your message to the folks on Wall Street now that are just doing everything they can to sort of like just smear this and attack this?
Well, Wall Street is so comfortable with the status quo. You know, the guys that are trading, God bless them. I mean, they do make our country run in some aspects, but they are so out of touch with what it means to have a blue collar instead of a white collar. And President Trump understands what makes the American working class tick, what makes it work. He has his finger on the pulse of middle America, and this is exactly who he's representing. This is exactly who he's standing up. Yes, if you live in Manhattan and you make $300,000 a year, not including your bonus, because you work at the New York Stock Exchange, tariffs to you are going to be a mess. They're an inconvenience. They're a headache. But when you have lost your jobs, generationally have lost your jobs because you live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and our stupid politicians have offshored your jobs to the nearest country to save money, what do you have to say to that worker? And this is who Donald Trump is standing up for. We've had generational shifts when it comes to our trade policies that have impacted 5 million Americans. President Trump is turning the course on that.
Harrison Fields from the White House. Quick commercial timeout, but we're going to hold you over because there's more to get into, and people need to understand how President Trump and the Great Deal are delivering for the American people. Human Events Daily, right back.
Bates here with your Real America's Voice News Break. Thanks so much for being along for the ride. Markets around the world are reacting to President Trump's tariffs. So far, U.S. stock markets are tanking, with the NASDAQ seeing losses of more than 5% in the early part of trading. Norway's foreign minister also pushing back against the Trump tariffs, saying he believes the new taxes will hurt NATO allies and may violate Article 2 of the alliance, which stresses economic cooperation among allies in order to avoid conflict. The foreign minister plans to raise the issue with Secretary of State Marco Rubio during a NATO meeting in Brussels today. Poland's prime minister predicting the tariffs will cut part of his country's gross domestic product, saying it was a, quote, severe and unpleasant blow because it comes from the closest ally, but we will survive. And Spain's prime minister chiming in, saying, we are once again asking President Trump to reconsider to sit down at the negotiating table with the European Union and also with the rest of the world. And back here in the United States, New York Mayor Eric Adams has a new lease on life, figuratively speaking, of course. Not only did he see the corruption case against him dismissed on Wednesday, he now also believes that he'll win re-election. However, the judge calls the Justice Department's rationale for wanting the charges against Adams thrown out troubling, saying that, quote, everything here smacks of a bargain. Dismissal of the indictment in exchange for immigration policy concessions, question mark? The judge went on to dismiss the case without prejudice, though, meaning the charges can't be brought again after Adams leaves office. While the Justice Department describes the Adams case as an example of political weaponization and a waste of resources, Adams claims, quote, I have always been solely beholden to the people of this city. The people he's talking about, of course, are the people of New York City. Well, Amazon could be adding TikTok to its portfolio soon. A Trump administration official says the online retailer put in a bid to buy the Chinese-owned social media site before it's banned. TikTok is set to go dark in the United States the day after tomorrow unless its Chinese owner, ByteDance, sells to an approved buyer. That's a quick check of your headlines.
And Jack, where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, Jack Posobiec, here we are back. Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C. Folks, there's a dirty little secret in the mobile phone industry that the major carriers don't want you to know about. Did you know that the big three mobile companies own all towers in the United States? So if that's the case, what's the difference between the carriers? Well, there's only one which actually lives by the same values as you, and only one that allows you to choose the best network for you. That's Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider and the only one that allows you access to all three networks. Keep your phone, keep your number, and now keep your values too. With Patriot Mobile, you know that none of your money is going to woke left, the DEI, or causes that have put America last. If you're worried about switching, don't. Their U.S.-based customer service team makes switching easy, and you will get the same service without compromising quality or convenience. Just go to patriotmobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT right now. Get a free month of service with promo code POSO. Don't be fooled by other mobile providers pretending to share your values. Support one that actively supports the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, our brave veterans, and first responders. Make the switch today. PatriotMobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT. I want to continue our interview. We've got a couple more minutes with Harrison Fields, Principal Deputy's press secretary over from the White House. We're walking through, and Harrison, you were telling us just as we left about how the status quo, look, here on the program, you know, we've talked about the status quo as almost like an addiction. And we've been saying that it's like you have to get over the addiction because it feels good while you're doing it, but it's actually hurting the body. It's actually causing pain to the body. And when you live in one of these states like Western Pennsylvania, we're going to have Senator McCormick on soon to talk about this. I understand he was talking about it this morning on another interview there, or like Ohio, where obviously the vice president hails from. When you really have seen the economic devastation in these areas, it looks like they lost a war, and it almost is like they lost an economic war. And I think this is something where there are parts of the country who are totally isolated from that, just don't understand what's really going on in Middle America.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the business of Washington isn't really built for change. It's a bureaucracy that reacts like it's reacting right now, that flails out of control when someone dares to change it. We saw the attacks on Doge when we decided to lift the hood of the federal government and realized that there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse that we're now getting rid of. Guess what the federal government did? It freaked out. Now we are making monumental changes to the way we do trade, to which our country is no longer being taken advantage of. And you've got politicians, I'll be the first to say it, on both sides of the aisle that are freaking out because, again, they do not like change. And the reality is President Trump was elected to bring change to Washington and really to bring change to the world. It might come to a surprise to some people, but if you've been watching anything that Donald Trump has been doing in his life, we understand disruption is something what he does, but it comes out better on the other side. President Trump implemented tariffs masterfully in his first term. He's going to do it again. But I'll caution anybody who's just worried about tariffs. Tariffs are one tool in the president's toolbox. We have tax cuts on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. We are continuing our deregulation. One of the first executive orders the president signed is for every 10 regulations, you have to get rid of 2. For every 1, you got to get rid of 10. And we are also revamping our energy apparatus to make sure that American energy is once again dominant. All of these things combined are going to lower prices, is going to make us stronger economically. It worked well in the first time around. It's going to work out again.
Well, and this idea, by the way, of course, of lowering the energy prices, lowering the cost of oil, of a barrel of oil, which would then lead to the lower gas prices at the pump for everybody. That also goes to lower inflation. It goes to lower prices at the grocery store. It goes to lower the prices of housing because anything that gets shipped, of course, it's all coming down. And that's something where I think that a lot of people don't realize that the price of energy affects the price of everything. That's certainly something that, our friends in the Democrat Party seem to have an issue with, but it's something that President Trump really indelibly understands.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I come from Florida, and gas prices a year ago were over $3.50, and the average now is just over $3. So you're seeing that already. And the American people are not just seeing changes in prices at the gas pump, they're also seeing that in the grocery stores. So you're seeing the immediate impacts of what positive energy, pro-growth energy policies look like. That's having a positive effect on the economy. And the other thing I would remind people is you got a lot of these so-called experts, and you got a lot of Democrats talking about the cost of tariffs, but they never talked about the cost of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party's inflation. That inflation was costing the average American household $1,000 a month, close to $12,000 a year. And here they want to push out tax foundation studies saying that tariffs are going to cost $2,100 per year when they completely ignore the fact that it was costing $12,000 a year when Joe Biden's inflation was wrecking through American households. Listen, we're going to achieve tax cuts. We are going to continue down our deregulation. But continuing the old ways of Washington in which the world had a field day when it came to our trade, that has to end. So many American workers lost their jobs. It was a disadvantage to us when it comes to national security. We are correcting all this in less than 80 days on the job. President Trump, the last thing he wants to do is cause pain for the American people. He was elected based on the pain that the American people felt, not just economically, but when it came to their safety due to our open border. And President Trump is going to prioritize our farmers, our hardworking men and women of the American working class, and that is his day one priority. That is all of our priority every time we come to the White House.
Harrison Fields, I want to be cognizant of your time and respectful of that. Thank you so much for spending this amount of time with us, explaining to us the ins and outs of this. And you're right. You're so right. People want to talk about tariffs in a vacuum, but that's not the only policy that President Trump is putting forward. Where can people go to get more information about this new American economic liberation as Liberation Day moves forward, and where can people follow you?
Yes, so I could be found at H Fields 47 on X, And then our rapid response account is incredible. The White House rapid response account. It's at
I'm a
Rapid
big fan.
Response 47.
I'm a big fan of Rapid Response 47 and of course, the official White House account itself. You always get the very best content on there. Harrison Fields.
WhiteHouse.gov.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate that. So, folks, we are, just give us a couple of minutes, and we're going to have Senator McCormick will be joining us here on the program to talk about this, as well as a new book that he's got out. He's been writing about this for a long time. He's my senator, of course, from Pennsylvania. But look, the great deal, okay? The great deal is so much more than just tariffs. It's so much more than, and I love the way Harrison puts this, it's so much more than just saying, oh, we're going to have tariffs on imports and that's going to get, no. It's not just that. It's also tariffs on imports, but we're also lowering taxes in other places. No tax on tips. No tax on Social Security. Okay, so lowering direct taxes on Americans and on seniors. So this has to be looked at in conjunction. Also, what else do we see? We see American energy dominance. When you put American energy exports out on the market, what does that do? That lowers the cost of oil, of a barrel of oil. By the way, it's one of the things, one of the reasons that you don't want to see a major war in the Middle East, because a major war in the Middle East always leads to what? Oh, that's right, increased oil prices. President Trump understands that, and that's why he's committed to the peace process in the region. When you have peace in the Middle East, when you have stability, when oil is flowing not just to the United States, but all around the world, that leads to a lower price that brings it down. That's going to bring down prices at the pump, which of course bring down, like I was just talking about, it goes through everything else. Then you have lower prices for your goods, lower prices for inputs, lower prices on energy, lower prices on transportation, et cetera, et cetera. It's all intrinsically interconnected. And President Trump understands this and understands what needs to be done going forward. And look, it's like this. I actually saw I saw someone X say this earlier, and it's like, it's kind of like America has been skipping leg day for the last 30 years, and this economically speaking. So it's economic leg day, and everybody knows about leg day. If you go work out, you have leg day. Nobody likes leg day. Nobody wants leg day. You think, oh my gosh, it's so painful. It's so troublesome. It's like, I like to do leg day on Mondays. I just get it out of the way. I just get it out of the way, and then I'm done, and I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the week until the next Monday. And a leg day, you suffer because you can't walk up the stairs, you can't walk down the stairs. You can't. Last week I went a little hard on leg day. I couldn't even sit down for a long time. I had to stand up for a while. But think about it. What does that give you? It gives you your strength. It gives you the strength of your foundation. It gives you the strength of your foundation to be able to stand up stronger than ever before. And that's been the problem. All of our work, economically speaking, the GDP's high, the GDP is so high. It's all upper body strength. It's all upper body, right? You can't just work on that. You can't do chest day every day. Sorry, even though Raheem Kassam does that. Oh, did I say that publicly? You can't just do arms and back. No. You got to focus on all that, but you have to also have leg day. You have to have your core strength. How many times did someone say in 2020, why don't we make our own antibiotics? How many times did we scream for economic independence? Well, if you want that independence, this is the path to it. This is the path, and I get it. I get that it's risky. I get that it's painful. Immediately it's going to be painful, right? Just like leg day, just like going to the gym when you first start going, especially when you have muscles they haven't worked out. Like some people don't work out all winter. They have, New Year's Day, and they go in with the resolutions. Like the gyms are always packed on New Year's Day, and then people go in and you're like, oh, I got to get this up, but you got to do it. You know why? That is how America stands strong. You need a strong foundation to lift up the greater things that are out there. And you know what else? As we wind down this experiment that has been the globalist American empire, then we don't need to worry about these things around the world as much anymore. We don't have to go to war with Russia. We don't have to go to war with Iran. In fact, we don't even need to go to war with China, because what will slow down the rise of China? Oh, that's right, actually rebalancing our trade with them. It's very simple. You want jobs, you want to stand tall against the human resources class and have a job that matters, a job that makes things. This is the way. It's called the Great Deal. We'll be right back with Senator Dave McCormick of the great state of Pennsylvania.
Number one, the tariffs, we've talked about nothing about tariffs for last month. The tariff chapter is one chapter in a book of economic policies that's going to include deregulation, energy dominance, extension and tax reform, foreign investment in the United States. So it's important, but it's one thing. And those things should give markets a lot of certainty. Second thing is what the tariffs are designed to do is address a fundamental problem of unfairness. And Mike Froman, I just heard him on earlier. The global trading system has brought great benefits, but it's been inherently unfair to the United States in many ways. China, many other countries have not followed those rules, and it's had devastating effects in my home state of Pennsylvania, my hometown. When I was growing up, the carpet mill had 2,000 employees. It has 200 now. So what's happening here is to address unfairness and also bring back a much stronger manufacturing base in the United States. That's the goal.
When I'm working long hours, I'm always listening to Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
All right, Jack Posobiec here, Human Events Daily Back Live. Honored to have on Human Events Senator from my personal, and I'm biased, a little biased, my favorite state in the entire union, the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where I hail from. It is Senator Dave McCormick. Senator, how are you?
Good to see you, Jack. Thanks for having me, man.
Well, I really appreciated what you said on CNBC this morning, and I think that's exactly right. People who aren't from Pennsylvania or from these places that have been devastated don't realize the effect that our current economic policy has had on them, and it really feels like this is a great deal for the people of the Commonwealth and people in places like that.
Yeah, you know, Jack, it's easy to forget sometimes. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And I did 500 visits across Pennsylvania in last year, in the last 2024. And you'd hear it over and over again in these small towns where manufacturers went out of business. And it's, listen, if you have fair trading, if you have a fair playing field, the American worker, the most innovative, hardworking, grittiest worker in the world in Pennsylvania, and we just haven't had fairness. And there's lots of violators, but the biggest violator of all has been China. And China has not followed by the rules. And so I was happy to see that President Trump's tariffs are directed, particularly the worst of it's directed towards China, because China, of the many unfairnesses we've seen in the global trading system, China's been at the top of the list.
That's exactly right. And you'll have these practices that are completely broken. The World Trade Organization is sitting there. China was let in. People warned about it. President Trump warned about this all the way back when, before it happened, before 1999. And people said, we can't trust China. We can't trust China. Well, it turns out he was exactly right. And to the point where, you even have timber that's chopped, trees that are chopped down in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that get sent to China, that get worked there, and all the woodworking is done there and then shipped back. And yet somehow we think that this process is good for Pennsylvanians. It's just not.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And listen, if you ask me, I'll be honest, if you asked me 20, 30 years ago, I'd have said, well, listen, there's a lot of benefits from that. But the cost became clear. You've had free traders, people that say they're free traders, that have basically said, listen, eventually China's going to come on board with the rules. Eventually Europe's going to be fair. It's not been working. And the people that have been hurt most by it are the people that are living paycheck to paycheck. And, Jack, you know this, and, I talked about it during the campaign. 60% of Pennsylvanians, 60% live paycheck to paycheck. And so if you look at them and how those towns have been gutted by unfair practices, you say, listen, we got to change it. And the ironic thing about it is President Trump was talking about it 30 or 40 years ago. He was one of the few. And unfortunately, what he predicted has turned out to be what happened.
No, it has. Now, Senator, I want to also say congratulations to you, by the way, because I see on Amazon you currently have the #1 bestseller new book, Business Mentoring and Coaching. This new book that's all out. It's called Who Believed in You, and it's all about mentorship, how purposeful mentorship changes the world. And I got to say, people don't realize this, but even I admit that I have mentors, and there are some mentors that I still talk to every single day. Actually, some that you probably know.
Jack, the thing about it is there's very few people that have been successful that can attribute it to a couple key people. We didn't start with the idea of writing a book. In fact, the book's been done for a couple years, but we were in the middle of a losing campaign and a winning campaign. But during COVID, we got 6 daughters, and they were locked up, disconnected from friends and coaches and teachers. And we started to talk about how mentorship really mattered to us. For me, it was a high school football coach. For Dina, a senator, met her, Kay Billy Hutchison, when she was waitressing, putting her way through University of Texas. And both of those, that coach and that senator, changed our lives. But we started to talk to a bunch of successful people we know, business leaders, political people. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, talks about her dad as a mentor, talks about President Trump, when she was getting just so treated so terribly, so nasty as the press secretary, and was thinking about quitting and going home. President Trump pulled her aside and said, listen, you are strong, you're great, you're beautiful. I believe in you. You're going to do great things. And she's done great things. Satya Nadella, this guy is the CEO of Microsoft, I think arguably one of the most successful CEOs in the country. He talks about this guy that Microsoft bought his software company called Great Plains. And this guy went to Microsoft and was Satya's boss, and Satya was kind of a mid-level software developer.
Senator, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got to run. We're just coming up on the end of the show. The book is Who Believed in You? How Purposeful Mentorship Changes the World. And I will see you tomorrow at the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. Senator Dave McCormick of the Great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Senator. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
They tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro.
Steve Bannon.
Now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
Is that a prison bill that will ever shut me up?
Welcome to America's Voice Live. Our Real America's Voice team is going places others won't.
We need to take cover of that was incoming into Israeli territory.
To show you what they don't want you to see.
It's still a disaster. What's the latest?
They call these street releases. You've got hundreds of people being dropped off. It's getting worse.
We're the nation's fastest growing news program for a reason.
Real journalism.
They're all marching down to the White House.
Sounds to me, Ben, like they won't be happy until Israel doesn't exist.
Real American news.
America is under chemical warfare attack. Fentanyl is the weapon.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
I appreciate you guys very, very much.
This is America's Voice Live with Steve Gruber.
All right, welcome to a Thursday edition of America's Voice Live. I am Brian Glenn, filling in for the great Steve Gruber. We've got a fantastic show. Now, it has been a packed week already with a ton of news. We just came off of Liberation Day yesterday, a fantastic event there in the Rose Garden. We're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes with someone close to the Trump team that could talk about that. Plus, concert tickets. We had Kid Rock in the White House this week, where President Trump basically signed an executive order to help combat ticket scalpers. We'll talk about that as well. Also, we have one of those mother whose son has died of a fentanyl overdose on the show. We'll talk about what can be done to stop the dangerous drugs going over the border. Then later, anti-Israel activists have placed propaganda guides around Columbia universities. A manual has surfaced on campus, and Jewish students say it matches ones that the groups of the Unity of Fields has dropped there as well. Horrible things that are going on in across our university. So we'll get to all of that here. And of course, our last question of the day: what makes America so great? What are the great things about America? We've got a great question on that as well. But all eyes were on these reciprocal tariffs on imported goods yesterday at the Rose Garden at the White House. Let's bring in Kush Desai, his Deputy Press Secretary, joining me now to talk about the reaction that we've gotten, not only here at the White House, but then across this globe as people are weighing in on these reciprocal tariffs. Kush, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's talk about these reciprocal tariffs yesterday. Liberation Day in this country. Your thoughts?
Liberation Day, it's going to go down as a national holiday, I think. Yesterday marked the first time that a president in decades took strong, decisive action to really end the bloodletting of our country and end the disaster of these free trade policies that have shipped millions of our jobs overseas and trillions of dollars of our wealth to foreigners.
You know, when you look at these reciprocal trades, the percentages that President Trump put out, many thought they could have been even higher. He describes them as fair. What's your take on that?
Well, the president said it's not just fair, it's lenient. He's trying to be lenient here to usher in this new era of free and fair reciprocal trade. And so, you know, he said it very clearly. He didn't want to be too harsh, and I think that's the way the president is. He's a nice guy.
Yeah. Well, if you take a look at the chart that he was holding up yesterday, you'll see what President Trump did. He placed tariffs on other countries based on what they were charging us. Now, the U.S., when you take a look at China, what a big discrepancy there with China and Cambodia as well. Those tariffs that we hit them with is far less than what they hit us with.
That's exactly right. And so that's why when you look at just the trade deficits that this country is running, I mean, trillions of dollars in trade deficits, that means jobs, that means industry being hollowed out, and that means trillions of dollars of our wealth going to the hands of foreigners. And so this action is really the first and most decisive action that any president, certainly in my lifetime, I guess I'm a young guy, but certainly in my lifetime, has taken to kind of remedy what's happened here for decades.
Yeah, and it looks like some countries are basically okay with what President Trump is doing right now, and others, you know, aren't so good with it. But these are America First values. This is what President Trump, this is what he campaigned on. This is what he said he was going to do, and he was going to bring manufacturing back to this country, one of which we've seen in automobiles. Your thoughts on kind of bringing this manufacturing, putting Americans to work? And look, it's simple, Kush. If you make it here, you sell it here, you don't pay any tariffs.
That's exactly right. And one thing I'd add is it's not just what President said he would do, it's what the American people voted for him resoundingly this past November to do. And his president's been very clear that if you want to avoid the tariff, just make here in the United States. And we're seeing a chorus of industry leaders, TSMC, NVIDIA, Apple, that are doing just that. We've seen investment commitments worth trillions of dollars so far pouring into this country to build here, to invest here, right here in the United States, create good-paying jobs, and bring back restore American greatness here. And that's exactly what's happening. And remember, a tariff is one part of the economic agenda. We're also doing deregulation. The Biden people alone put in trillions of dollars of regulations on our economy. We're trying to do tax cuts. We're unleashing American energy. Certainly, you're seeing that at the gas pump. So we're taking a full of economy approach here to really restore American greatness, and that's exactly what's unfolding before our eyes.
Kush, it's really interesting to watch the mainstream media go into complete meltdown. They were doom and gloom before this thing was even announced yesterday at 4 o'clock. They already had the headlines pretty much laid out for you. I said this earlier on X. I think there's newsrooms across the country that are having these little mini focus groups that will go out into the community. They'll find the worst local story that some small business all of a sudden can't afford to keep their doors open. They've got to charge too much for their product. So what has been the reaction within the Trump campaign from the mainstream media that you guys have gone on their morning shows and talked to them? What are the questions they're asking you?
Sure. I mean, look, what we're seeing is this fear mongering from mainstream media that, it's in this case when they're rooting against President Trump, you're not rooting against President Trump, you're rooting against the American people here and the American economy, because that's who these policies, that's what this reciprocal trade action is really geared towards helping, the American people and the American country. And so we're going out there and we're getting, the same sort of fake news questions about, oh, this will drive up inflation, or this will do that, or this is a disaster for global trade. But again, our only focus here is the American people and what's best for the American country. We're putting Americans and America first. And the mainstream media doesn't seem to get that. I mean, we talk about leveling the playing field. A lot of these Democrats and the mainstream media people, talk about a level playing field. They don't even agree that men shouldn't play in women's sports. So the idea of reciprocity or a level playing field is just something that just they don't really get at an intuitive level.
Kush, it almost seems like they're rooting for the demise of this country. They want to see this market crash. They're keeping an eye on it. I was looking at a computer screen earlier that had about 25 different news outlets all at one time, and I noticed one continuous theme. They all had the markets in red. It was all doom and gloom. It was all focused on the markets. It seems like they want this to fail, but in reality, the American people that have been on the campaign for as long as I have, and you have as well, we've seen the messaging. We know exactly what Americans want. So I don't think they're necessarily buying into what the mainstream media is telling them how they should react to this. They know this is a part of the long game. No pun intended to President Trump going down to the LIV golf tournament now. No pun intended there. But this is the long game of the president to get that reinvestment in here. And when he does that, we all get wealthy again.
That's exactly right. It's the long game, and it's the president thinking, for him, it's not about politics. It's not about scoring a win. The easy thing for him to do would be just to continue the status quo and not have the sort of pushback he's getting. But again, he's thinking about our country. He's thinking about our kids, our grandkids, and their economic prosperity. So, when Democrats, again, when they're trying to score political points here, but they're not scoring political points. What they're doing is rooting against the prosperity of our country and our citizens, and that's who the president cares most about.
Yeah. Okay, we got a couple minutes left, and I just want to, we'll put all this tariff talk aside. Let's talk about what it's like to work inside the Trump comms department. Let's be honest. That has got to be the most active position in the White House, the most transparent administration I think we've ever seen in the Oval Office. What is it like to work on the comms side, and how many requests do you guys get a day for people to interview President Trump?
We get hundreds of requests all day, interview requests for comment. We're in the trenches there, but you know what? We love it. We're a part of the great, the American Renaissance here, the renewal of the American dream, the restoration of American greatness. And so it feels like an honor to be kind of in the front lines of doing what the president wants to do and enacting his vision.
Yeah, we're closing in on, 100 days in office. Out of all the events that he's had, Kush, do you have any personal favorite that you just enjoyed watching it unfold? Do you have anything that stands out to you?
I think the event that stands out most is his school choice event, and just seeing those children, standing at little desks alongside the president. I think that really shows, the people he's thinking most about, the future of this country, their children, our children, our grandchildren's future. And so it's really nice and kind of metaphoric and emblematic of his presidency and the people he prioritizes most.
I got to agree with you. Out of all the things I've seen so far at the White House, that by far, I think, was the most touching moment, and to see all those kids huddled around President Trump, and he's basically doing now what we need to do now. And I've said this before, Kush, and maybe you can relay this to the president, maybe it's put some pressure on the House, is I want to see a carrier pigeon go like this from the executive order in the Oval Office to fly that into the House floor, and let's get these executive orders put into legislation, get them voted on, get them in the Senate, get them to get it on. So we get these things certified into law. That's what I want. I want a conveyor belt. If we can't find the pigeon to do it, I want the conveyor belt to do it, because we got to get these executed. And the President Trump has put out some of the most amazing executive orders that we can have in this country. It's time for Congress and Senate to get behind them. What say you?
I agree, and I think we're working with our friends and allies on the Hill, and we expect them to do the right thing to help restore American greatness here.
Yeah, good stuff there. Kush, we certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Coming up after the break, talking about executive orders, we've got one that got me excited. Kid Rock was in the room. We're taking on ticket prices, big concerts, big profit, but who really gets the profit? We'll talk to one industry expert after the break on this Thursday edition of America Voices Live. Welcome back. Now, recently, President Trump was accompanied by Kid Rock in the Oval Office where he signed an executive order targeting ticket scalpers and their bots. Now, at the same time, we're seeing an act in Congress called the Ticket Act that essentially goes against that executive order and what President Trump is ultimately trying to do. Here with me now to discuss is Randy Nichols. Randy, you're with the Force Media Management. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, you're an industry expert. You've been in the concert, live production, management business for a long time. You have seen this industry, I would imagine, change in so different ways. Now, the executive order that President Trump signed this past week, you like it, but then there's some things on it that you don't like. But let's first get into this Ticket Act. It was introduced last session of Congress. It's been reintroduced now. Tell me a little bit about this Ticket Act and what you find is the problem with it.
Yeah, well, to start, the Ticket Act was introduced by Congressman Bill Criss, who happens to also be in bed with the ticket scalpers. So much so that 2 weeks ago, he was the keynote speaker at the Coalition of Ticket Fairness Conference. So you have a guy who's writing the law to protect the common fan that's being written by people working with the scalpers. So that, for starters, is a huge problem for us. Then on top of that, there's a markup of the bill scheduled for next week. This bill was introduced last year, but they still haven't found the time to talk to one artist about this bill. That to me seems like they have no interest in what the artists care about. And ultimately, the artists are looking out for the fans. Unfortunately, the scalper organizations have created AstroTurf groups that are called fan organizations that pose as consumer rights groups that are the only people getting a voice in the room. And we need to get a voice in the room of the artists, just like President Trump offered to Kid Rock.
Yeah, I find it kind of hard to believe that they've never actually invited an artist to come and testify and give their opinion of everything, because ultimately they're the ones that are putting seats in the butts in the seats, I should say. They're the content. They're the artist. They should have, I think, a pretty loud voice in this conversation.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, especially being that I represent artists for a living. But what I would say is past bills, we've absolutely had artists invited. Investigations into companies like Live Nation, ticketing, live event investigations. We have had artists invited. For the reason that I assume we haven't been invited to this one is because we're some of the only people who understand what's actually going on and will call them out. They invite Live Nation Ticketmaster into the room, and the scalpers immediately say they're Live Nation, they're evil, and they have such a poor view of the general public that the legislators listen to that, and they don't go that step further to dig and hear what the artists have to say. Or if you ask any independent promoter as well, any independent venue owner, like, this is an issue from the club that holds 500-600 people through to the largest stadiums in the world.
Yeah, I'm reading a stat here. Let me make sure I get this right. StubHub spent over $828 billion last year on marketing, most to Google ads, to basically maybe confuse people to kind of click over to their site. Explain that to me.
Yeah, so according to their S1, because they just filed to go public, so we have to assume that those numbers are correct, they regularly are buying advertising on Google and other areas, but Google is the biggest area. And what they do is they don't invest into the live event. They don't own the venue. They don't pay the artist. They don't care about the artist experience. They're simply trying to get you to buy a ticket. So they have significantly more money to play with their fees to spend tremendous amounts of money on Google ads. So if you Google any of your favorite artist's name, go to Google right now while you're listening to this show, and you will see that the first thing that comes up is a StubHub link or sometimes another ticket scalper link. Because the way Google ads work is it's an auction, and the highest bidder gets the top spaces. So regularly, the artist promoter cannot afford to buy the top spot on the sites, which is bonkers.
That is incredible. Okay, break down, and we got about 2 minutes left, and I'm going to see if we can get through this real quickly. Break down the logistics of a concert as far as the ticket markup. Let's just say you have an artist and the ticket's $25. Walk me through how much of the fees and the inflate it and the scalpers, what that ticket could ultimately end up costing the concert goer.
Well, I'll use a great example I heard from some ticket scalpers the other day. On the Taylor Swift tour last summer, she was doing everything she could to thwart scalpers, and she dropped 5,000 tickets the day of the show for every day on her tour in the U.S. to try to create a last-minute way for fans to get tickets. Unbeknownst to Taylor Swift's team, 95% of those tickets were bought by scalpers, and the number that I've heard directly from the scalper's mouth is that they sold them for 70 times the face value. So that gives you an idea of the kind of markup and fees that you're seeing on these. And as far as the ticketing companies like StubHub, Vivid Seats, Viagogo, they're charging anywhere between 30 and 50% of the ticket price in fees.
Incredible. About 45 seconds left. What's your message to President Trump? What would you suggest he do now to ultimately continue what he did in the Oval Office with Kid Rock to just wipe away some of these outrageous ticket prices?
Yeah, I would love to have President Trump speak directly to Congressman Billikris and pause the markup on this bill, allow artists in the room to testify, allow additional voices outside of scalpers and Ticketmaster into the room so that we have a fair bill that will actually protect both the fans and the artists.
Yeah. Well, we certainly appreciate you coming on, Randy, and you're doing some great work there. And hopefully we can circle back around and we'll be able to eventually get all this waste, fraud, and abuse in this industry out, and these artists can truly make the money they deserve. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to educate the world on this.
Thank you. All right, coming up after the break, the border is the most secure it's been in history, but there's still an issue of fentanyl, all thanks to the previous administration. Up next, we'll talk about that fight against fentanyl. Do not go anywhere. All right, welcome back to a Thursday edition of AVL. I am Brian Glenn. The great Steve Gruber is off today. You'll see him back in the chair here real soon. Now, under President Trump, the border is the most secure it's ever been, but within the last 50 years. To add to that, he did within the first 110 days in office. With border crossings down, fentanyl is still coming into the country, and it needs to stop. Ann Fundner, whose son tragically died from a fentanyl overdose, is still speaking out to get this dangerous drug off the streets. She joins me now to discuss that. First of all, we're sorry, very sorry, praying for your loss. No one wants to get that news of losing a loved one, so I certainly, my heart is with you to begin this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your story and sharing your passion of why we need this border and this fentanyl to stop from coming across the border.
Yeah, I mean, we have President Trump who has secured the border. Border crossings are down 98%. We're on the right track for everything. These tariffs are fantastic. I'll tell you what, they mean a lot to the people who have lost children because there's no price on human life. And it's important that we do all the things necessary to secure the borders, to hold other countries where it's coming from accountable, and protect American citizens. And President Trump has been doing that.
What type of support have you gotten from law enforcement, from those around your circle of influence, church, family, neighbors, on the loss of your son? And what do you feel like needs to be done, like right now? If you could do something, one thing right now, to fight this fentanyl coming to this country, all drugs at that matter, what would it be? But what has been the outreach and support for your loss?
Well, my friends and family and church, everybody has been absolutely wonderful. It's unthinkable, unspeakable. When you lose a child, I pray that no parent ever has to go through what I've been through, because, you have such high hopes for this beautiful little baby, and you raise them up to be these wonderful children and put so much into them in sports, and you love them so much, and they become everything to you. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in a moment, they're gone. And I would never, ever want another parent to have to go through the loss of their child. So what needs to happen is exactly what President Trump is doing. I also think that there needs to be a lot of education in the school systems, a lot of parental education, peer pressure education. Obviously, it's very important to talk about drugs to children. I know President Trump is not only going to do a campaign, but he's also looking into educational programs for the schools in this country to be able to educate children on the dangers, of poison. It's not even, I can't even call it a drug, it's poison. So there's a lot that needs to still happen, but President Trump is doing everything. And it's been very emotional, but heartwarming in a way. Just the things that he's done has been incredible. We're so thankful.
Yeah. It seems like the fight, and you laid that out great, the fight is at the border, but really the education needs to be in the schools and to teach these kids a little bit about what to avoid and what to, obviously not to get into. When we got about a minute and a half left, now let me ask you a question. I heard someone during the campaign say we're only 40 pounds of fentanyl came across our northern border. That's all, only 40 pounds. And I thought to myself, that 40 pounds could do so much harm. When you hear people on the left, you hear Democrats often dismiss the importance of getting fentanyl, or they don't believe the claims that 300 people a day die every day from a fentanyl overdose. What's your message to the Democrats and those who dismiss even the significance of catching 40 pounds of fentanyl?
I mean, it's disgusting. I came across this last night, and I saw somebody had posted something like that. And, you know, if there's even one salt grain of fentanyl that comes over the border, it's too much because it kills people. And just a couple of grains of salt can kill one person. And isn't one person's life enough? I mean, we need to keep fighting this. Every single child matters. Every single person who dies have a set of parents at home grieving, have family members, children, brothers, sisters who grieve them, and every single life matters. 40 pounds of fentanyl can kill tens and hundreds of thousands of people. It is ridiculous that anyone would make such an just horrible, I don't want to say anything terrible, but just an absolutely moronic statement. It's just horrible that anyone would say such a thing. It breaks my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ann, I know that our viewers right now are hearing your story, and they're hearing the pain and the love that you have in your voice for your son. We certainly are praying for you. We certainly appreciate you coming on, and let's just keep the fight up to close these borders and get these drugs off the street. Thank you so much for joining us, Ann.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. I tell you, that war and fentanyl, we were screaming it forever on the campaign trail that was something that was happening. And, well, I'm glad that President Trump is doing something. Well, tariff wars, recession fears, and stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs here lately in volatile markets like we have right now. But don't sit on the sideline. Get your head in, take your head out of the sand, rather. Take control in safeguarding your savings. That's why many Americans today are turning to the Birch Gold Group. They have helped tens of thousands to convert their existing IRAs into a 401k or a physical gold-backed IRA. It's time to hedge against inflation and economic instability with gold. Learn how to own physical gold in a tax-sheltered account. Text America to 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free, no-obligation information kit. Just text America to 989898. Now they got an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. Countless 5-star reviews. Trust Birch Gold Group. Help protect your savings with gold, and you can always rest assured it will protect you. It took decades to get us into the tangled mess they're trying to unpack now. How long will it take? None of us really know, but to get out of it at what cost, we don't know that as well. Text America to 989898 today. That is the Birch Gold Group. Coming up after the break, an anti-Israeli vandalism guide has been found on Columbia University's campus, and its contents will shock you. We'll talk about that when we come back on Thursday edition of AVL. All right, welcome back to a Thursday edition of AVL. I am Brian Glenn. Steve Gruber will be back in this chair very soon, so don't worry. All right, anti-Israeli student activists have seemingly distributed a vandalism guide at Columbia University in New York. Now, this sounds insane. A manual was found on an Ivy League campus, and Jewish students at the university have since identified the manual on the website of the anti-Israeli group Unity of Fields. The online version of the manual includes 7 steps, including creating a cell, which is defined as an autonomous group taking actions without detection as part of a Palestinian Action Underground. The guide goes into encouraging readers to plan your action through different tactics, such as using fire extinguishers, spread red paint, and using spray paint for messages like Free Palestine. Joining me to discuss this, Campus Reform correspondent C.J. Womack. I spoke to you in the break briefly before we started. I cannot believe that this type of stuff is being littered across Ivy League campuses, Columbia University, and I'm sure that there are on others as well. What's going through your mind when you guys first came across this?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me. But its leadership sets the tone at a university, and that tone at Columbia has been weak, chaotic, and complicit. The Columbia University administration has completely failed to keep its students safe from pro-Hamas terrorist extremism on campus. And now there is an online manual that is circulating about how to vandalize campus and dodge accountability. It's basically an Antifa starter pack that meets pro-Hamas college activism.
That's exactly what I was thinking right before you said that. This is like the Antifa starter kit. Just open it up and go. But, you know, we also said this. There is no organic gathering of these protesters. Is that right?
No, it can't. It's no way it's an organic gathering. It's all predetermined, and it's all in the packet. These are predetermined protests. None of this is organic or coming about randomly. This is completely predetermined and organic.
Now, you know, does the university make any attempt to make sure these packets, these pamphlets, don't get distributed around the campus? I mean, are they doing anything to stop it?
Well, yeah, it's not a campus kumbaya that's going to stop any of this. It's accountability. And we reported this at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, and it's truly started with Secretary Marco Rubio, who has denied over 300 international student visas to students who have ties to Hamas. We saw Harvard University earlier break ties with a school in the West Bank that had ties to Hamas. And we saw our own editor-in-chief, Zachary Marshall, put in a Title VI complaint for civil rights against Princeton, and now the Trump administration is investigating $210 million. So outside force is not the only thing. Outside reporting is not the only thing that's going to fix this. It's going to take some real hard action from the inside and the outside.
Yeah, I think the public court of opinion on these activists, and that's exactly what they were. They can call them students, but they're activists. In the public court of opinion, they want them gone. Because a lot of them, as you know, they're not even U.S. citizens. And so they don't really have the constitutional rights that someone who was born here and is a citizen. So to see them get caught up in the court system after all of this destruction that they have brought to these college campuses, and not to mention disrupted people from going to class. Because, right. I mean, hey, if I was a parent paying $100,000 a year for my kid to go to class and they can't because these clowns are out doing that, I'd be pretty upset.
Yeah, at the end of the day, anti-Semitism and campus vandalism is not a First Amendment issue. It's a hate speech issue. And I'm completely in agreement with the Trump administration continuing to cut funding from these universities because we have seen that it is causing real change. We saw the Columbia interim president, Armstrong, step down the other day because of her flip-flopping mask policies in regards to this pamphlet. And we're seeing these schools change their anti-Semitism on their campuses, and cutting the federal funding from these universities is going to cause a real change. And the Trump administration is just doing that.
That's awesome. You know, I also think even if you took the funding away from them, these people have so huge of a foundation and grants. They get so much money that it would take a long time, I think, before they would ultimately wake up from getting demonetized, which is exactly what we'd like to do. How can people get more information? I know that you guys work with a lot across this country on campuses. How can people get more information?
Yes, we reported at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform. You can look it up, and we are reporting on it daily. Anti-Semitism is not stopping. The Trump administration is going to continue to seek it out on campuses and cut funding, but Campus Reform is reporting it, and we're not going to stop reporting it because anti-Semitism on college campuses is not acceptable, and the American people on November 5th voted overwhelmingly for college campuses to stop anti-Semitism and to keep Jewish students safe.
They sure did. I appreciate your time, CJ, and hopefully we'll see you soon talking about how we're defeating all of this nonsense. Thank you. I just can't believe that goes on. A guide to how to riot and cause disturbances. Crazy. That's the world we live in. All right, don't go anywhere. We've got more of a Thursday edition coming up after the break. All right, my name is Brian Glenn. Steve Gruber will be back in this chair to host this show, but I have the pleasure of doing it today, and also have the pleasure to talk to my next guest. We're going to have some fun here in just a second, but your health is important. That's why you want to ensure that you are boosting it in a natural way. That's why I trust Field of Greens. Love it. Join me now to talk about Field of Greens can do for you as best-selling author, fitness instructor, my friend, and also host of Faith and Freedom right here on Real America's Voice, Shemaine Nugent. She is going to share with us some of the most practical, easy-to-follow tips from her recovery journey to help boost your immune system naturally. Your health. Shemaine, welcome to the show. And I told you in the break, we are longtime friends. It's such a pleasure to talk to you again.
Brian, it's so good to see you. Thank you for having me. Feels like old home week.
It is. It is. All right. Well, you've picked up some simple, life-changing health tips on your journey. What's one thing that someone can start right now?
Well, you know, Brian, I've been a fitness instructor since 1980, just a couple of years. I've seen a lot of things come and go, and I've seen a lot of people get so excited in January, and then February, March, April, May, they do too much too fast. So my advice is to start small, baby steps. It's way easier to stick with it that way. And, you know, we got to look at our diet, but that's not easy to do all the time, especially when we travel, no matter how determined you are. So here is one simple change that I like to do. I take 1 scoop of Field of Greens and swap it out for something sugary, fruit juice or soda or whatever. And I put it in my water and I have that. And it's just that one little tweak and I start feeling better the whole day.
You know, Field of Greens is one of those things where if people tried to replicate how much you need to get into your diet, it would almost be impossible. But why Field of Greens? Like, what do they do that makes it so easy to get all of these nutrients that you need?
Well, you know, our bodies are made to be fueled by nature, by God. And that's why Ted and I like Field of Greens because, you know, Brian, we're hunters. We pretty much live off the land, but we're not always successful when we hunt. And plus there's, you know, the winter, we can't get a hold of fresh fruits and vegetables and we're traveling. So I rely on Field of Greens and it's got whole fruits and whole vegetables and that's it in one drink. And then the other really important thing is that doctors developed Field of Greens carefully selecting each fruit and vegetable for specific heart benefits, health benefits, for liver and kidneys and lungs and metabolism and even healthy weight. And every ingredient, it's not just throwing stuff in there. Every ingredient serves a purpose. That's why it works.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because when I've taken supplements before, whether it's protein or anything else, how do you know it's working? Do you like how long does it take to go into your system before it kicks in, or how many days would it take before you start to notice a difference in the way you feel?
Well, we were at Mar-a-Lago last month. I think I missed you there. I just missed you by a day or something. And I noticed that Field of Greens wasn't working because I didn't bring it with me. And I kind of just felt lagging. So I noticed the energy boost first. And then, you know, there's things like gut health is a big issue now. And I just feel better overall. And here's the other big issue, that we know that it's working because you're going to feel better. And the doctors, your doctor, are going to be able to say, hey, what are you using? Because I want some of that too. But if your doctor doesn't notice the difference in your health, you get your money back. Like, who does that?
That's cool. That's cool. I like that. Well, you've got a new book out, Abundantly Well. You got a TV show and so much going on in your life. How can people find out more about you? I mean, you're everywhere. You're everywhere. Going on social media. Well, there she is working out. There she is drinking Field of Greens. You got so much going on. How can someone get a hold of you?
Well, I just got back on Facebook. I got hacked on Facebook, and I just got back on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, and you know I've got a show right here on Real America's Voice. Come on, called Faith and Freedom, and I get to interview a lot of great people. Brian, have you been on my show before? A long time ago. You need to come back.
I need to come back. It's been way too long.
Yes.
I want to come back.
Yes.
We need to make that happen.
Yes,
have your people just call me, because I don't have those people. You have those people.
You don't have
and I say
people?
your people call my people. I don't have any people. I just have myself.
All right, I'll text you.
There you go. Well, Shemaine, you're great. You're healthy. You epitomize health, and obviously, Field of Greens is doing it for you. We certainly appreciate you coming on. So if you'd like to make some simple health changes, and Field of Greens sounds like a smart way to do it, just do it. Go get a starter kit, 20% off discount when you use promo code RAV. That's at fieldofgreens.com, fieldofgreens.com, fieldofgreens.com. That's right. Say it one more time, fieldofgreens.com, promo code RAV at fieldofgreens.com. After the break, we've got plenty more, which I wish Shemaine Nugent was coming back. We can do that, right? We'll be right back. right, welcome back to AVL. I am Brian Glenn, filling in for the great Steve Gruber. All right, a Pennsylvania gym owner has sparked a viral fitness trend with his old man challenge. The challenge itself is deceptively simple, yet surprisingly difficult. The gym owner performs a series of moves that test balance, flexibility, and endurance, encouraging men over 50, that would be me, to step outside their comfort zone. Since posting the video, the Old Man Challenge has taken social media by storm, with fitness enthusiasts of all ages attempting to complete it. Some succeed while others struggle, proving just how important it is to maintain overall fitness health as we age. With millions of views and thousands of comments, the challenge has sparked a much-needed conversation about staying mobile and active well into your later years. Are you up for the challenge? Check this out.
Ready? Squat to knees. Sit on heels. One leg out. Sit. Both legs out. Cross legs. Rock to knees. Internal rotate. Both legs and rock back to feet. Awesome.
Not sure I can do that. Not sure I can do that. I know why people are watching those videos, though. All right, let's go to what makes America wonderful. What are your thoughts on President Trump's reciprocal tariffs? Should they be higher, lower, and why? Answer right here. Darlene, he must be right because the left is always uptight. I like that. Diane says higher. Yes, reciprocal. I agree with you, Diane. I want them a little higher, too. Zeta says, I love tariffs. They are long overdue, but they shouldn't have been reciprocal tariffs. NAFTA was a tragedy to this country. I saw manufacturing leave this country, and that's the very, very sad when Jimmy Carter signed it into law. NAFTA agreement, even I knew it was going to be destructive to America, perhaps. Jerry Moe says it doesn't matter what we think. He is the president. I'm so sick of people questioning him, especially the liberal media. I'm saying it like that, assuming he's talking like that. I don't care how high or low prices go. We are America. We're resilient as long as he is implementing moral back into this country. I agree with you on that. William Featherstone says higher. We'll make other countries act faster. Why is it wrong for us to want a better deal? Every state needs a DOGE department. Yes, we do. And Chris says they know what to do. Relax and wait. It will take a while, just like Donald Trump said. One more. Larry Wilcox. It works for other countries against us, so why shouldn't it work against other countries? It's a time for America to stop being used and abused. I agree with that. Look, when I saw I wish I had the totals with me in front of me. When I saw them, my first thought was, I think they should be slightly higher, but I think there's some room for negotiation on there. So if these countries don't get it in order, perhaps we can tick it up. One more. Scott said, I think it's fine where it is right now. He's a businessman. This will work in our favor. The left is having tariff tantrums. Turn on the news and you'll see what these tariff tantrums look like. There's something else. Okay, to kind of recap the show, if you want to see more of this, go to our website. You could actually rewatch this show. If you missed concert tickets, we talked about how to lower prices on concert tickets, and of course, the executive order that President Trump signed just a couple of days ago in the Oval Office with Kid Rock doesn't do enough compared to some industry folks. Get involved with that, and as always, follow us on social media. Follow me at Brian Glenn TV across the board, at Brian on Truth Social, at Brian Glenn TV on Getter, Instagram, on Twitter. Until next time, everybody, goodbye. God bless. Filling in for the great Steve Gruber. Brian Glenn's been my pleasure. Have a great rest of your